Imagine this. A misty dawn breaks over a thatched roof cottage in 12th century England, where a young boy named Thomas stirs on a straw pallet shared with his siblings, the air thick with the smell of peat smoke and unwashed wool. No cozy blankets or teddy bears here, just the harsh reality of a world where childhood wasn't a time of carefree play, but a rapid sprint toward adulthood, survival, and duty. In medieval Europe, from the fall of Rome in the 5th century to the Renaissance dawn in the 15th, kids grew up fast, facing plagues, famines, and feudal lords who saw them as future laborers or cannon fodder. But what if I told you that amid the mud and misery, there were sparks of joy, ingenious games, and surprising freedoms that make our modern parenting look overly protective? Stick around, because we're diving into the raw, riveting lives of these medieval moppets, the peasants' tots, noble heirs, and street urchins who navigated a world of knights, monasteries, and mysteries. And just when you think it's all doom and gloom, I'll unveil a twist that reveals how their upbringing forged the foundations of our society today. First off, let's set the stage. Medieval Europe wasn't a monolith. It spanned 1,000 years across diverse regions, from the foggy moors of Britain to the sun-baked hills of Italy, the frozen fjords of Scandinavia to the bustling markets of Byzantium. Society was stratified like a layer cake. At the top, kings and nobles. In the middle, clergy and merchants. At the bottom, the vast majority, serfs and peasants who toiled the land. Children? They weren't pampered princes or princesses in fairy tales. Childhood was short, often ending by age 12 or 14 when kids were considered adults. Historians divided into infancy, birth to 7, childhood, 7 to 14, and adolescence, blending into maturity. But curious yet? What did life look like for a typical peasant child like Thomas in the high Middle Ages, 11th to 13th centuries, when castles dotted the landscape and the church ruled hearts? Thomas wakes before sunrise in his family's one-room hovel built from wattle and daub, sticks woven and plastered with mud, topped with a leaky thatch roof infested with vermin. No privacy here. The whole family, parents, grandparents, siblings, maybe even livestock in winter, shares the space. Beds? A sack of straw or ferns on the dirt floor, crawling with fleas that spread diseases like the bubonic plague. Lighting a rushlight, a cheap candle from reeds dipped in animal fat, Thomas mutters a prayer to Saint Christopher for protection. Religion permeated everything, with kids learning to cross themselves before they could walk. But here's a mind-boggler. Despite the squalor, these homes were hubs of ingenuity. Families used herbal repellents like tansy to ward off bugs, and some had smoke bays to vent fires, preventing the choking haze that caused lifelong coughs. Intriguing, right? But what fueled these tiny bodies for the day ahead? Breakfast is meager, a hunk of coarse rye bread, perhaps cheese or ale. Yes, even kids drank weak beer because water was often contaminated with sewage. In wealthier regions like France, porridge from oats or barley might include peas or leeks from the garden plot. Meat? A luxury, saved for feasts. Peasants ate mostly veggies, grains, and dairy. Malnutrition was rampant, stunting growth. Medieval kids were shorter than modern ones, averaging 5 feet as adults. But payoff to your curiosity, this diet birthed culinary staples like pottage, a thick stew that's the ancestor of your hearty soup. Mothers breastfed infants for up to 2 years, using wetness as if noble, but peasants couldn't afford that. Swaddling was common, babies wrapped tightly in cloth to straighten limbs, left for hours while parents worked. Shocking fact, infant mortality hovered at 30 to 50% from infections, accidents, or exposure. Some parents even practiced infanticide during famines, especially for girls in patriarchal societies. Yet surviving kids were cherished as future helpers. So, as the sun rises, what does Thomas do next? By age 7, Thomas is out in the fields, herding geese or gleaning leftover grains after harvest, a task called bird scaring to protect crops from pests. Peasant kids worked alongside adults from dawn to dusk, learning by doing. Boys plowed with oxen, girls spun wool or tended gardens.
No child labor laws here. The feudal system demanded it. Lords owned the land and serfs paid with labor, kids included. In manors, the open field system divided strips among families, fostering community but inefficiency. Tools were basic: wooden sickles, iron if lucky, a post-1000 CE innovation from better forges. But here's the hook: play intertwined with work. Kids fashioned toys from scraps: corn husk dolls, wooden tops spun with whips, or knuckle bones, sheep bones tossed like jacks. Games like Blind Man's Buff or early soccer, using inflated pig bladders, built skills for survival. Mind-boggling? Medieval kids had more outdoor freedom than today's screen-bound tots, roaming woods for berries or fishing in streams. But dangers lurked: wolves, bandits, or drowning in rivers. What if a lord's hunt trampled their fields? That's when tensions brewed. Taxes and tithes crushed families. Peasants gave 10% to the church, plus feudal dues, chickens, eggs, or labor. Kids witnessed this. Some were sent as oblates to monasteries at age 7, donated as future monks. Education? Spotty for peasants. Most were illiterate, learning orally through folk tales or church sermons in Latin they barely understood. But in towns, guild schools taught basics: reading, writing, arithmetic for artisan kids. Noble kids? A different world. Let's shift to Lady Eleanor's daughter, young Beatrice, in a Norman castle. She wakes in a tapestry-hung chamber, on a feather mattress, attended by servants. Breakfast: white bread, fruits, perhaps spiced wine. Girls learned embroidery, music, and household management from mothers or tutors, preparing for arranged marriages by 12. Boys trained as pages at 7, serving lords, then squires at 14, learning swordplay and chivalry. Tournaments were playgrounds, mock battles building warriors. But even nobles faced horrors. The Children's Crusade of 1212 saw thousands of kids march to Jerusalem, most perishing or enslaved. Shocking, isn't it? Religion fueled such zeal. Kids confessed sins early, fearing hellfire preached by friars. But family life was the core, multi-generational and patriarchal. Fathers ruled, but mothers wielded influence in homes. Siblings shared everything: beds, clothes, chores. Orphans? Common due to wars like the Crusades. They became wards of guilds or churches. Marriage came early: girls at 12 to 14, boys 14 to 16, often to seal alliances. Love? Secondary. Troubadour songs romanticized courtly love, but reality was pragmatic. Childbirth was perilous. Midwives used herbs like ergot for labor, but infections killed many. Wet nurses raised noble babes, sometimes leading to emotional detachment. But here's a curious twist. Medieval parents showed affection through lullabies and rhymes like Ring Around the Rosie, eerily tied to the plague. Playtime included board games like chess, introduced via Arabs, or Nine Men's Morris, carved on stones. Festivals lit up lives: May Day with dancing around poles, Christmas with mumming plays where kids disguised as animals begged treats, Halloween's ancestor. But hardships loomed. The Black Death, 1347 to 1351, wiped out 30 to 60% of Europe, orphaning countless kids who wandered as beggars or joined gangs in London's underbelly. Symptoms? Buboes, fever. Kids watched parents die, then fended alone. Famines from bad weather, Little Ice Age post-1300, led to eating rats or leather. Wars? 100 Years' War, 1337 to 1453, conscripted teens, with boys as young as 12 wielding longbows. Yet resilience shone. Apprenticeships started at 12 to 14, boys to blacksmiths or masons, learning trades over 7 years, girls to seamstresses. Guilds provided structure, like modern unions, with feasts and protections. Urban kids in cities like Paris or Venice hawked wares in markets, dodging pickpockets. Byzantium's children, in the Eastern Roman Empire, had better education, Greek classics in schools, but faced Viking raids. Let's dynasty dive deeper. Early Middle Ages, 5th to 10th centuries, post-Rome chaos. Kids in Frankish villages learned survival amid barbarian invasions. Charlemagne's court schooled noble boys in liberal arts, but peasants herded pigs, using acorns as feed, an early permaculture. Viking kids in Scandinavia grew up seafaring, girls weaving sails, boys raiding by 15. Mind-boggling? Norse sagas were bedtime stories, glorifying adventure. High Middle Ages, feudalism peaks, cathedrals rise, built by mason apprentices starting young. Universities emerge in Bologna, Oxford, but only for elite boys. Peasant kids joined harvest festivals, feasting on ale and pies, but Inquisition shadows, heresy accusations could orphan families.
Late Middle Ages. Change accelerates. Printing press, 1450s, spreads books, but literacy low. Peasants' revolt, 1381 England, saw teen leaders demanding rights. Ottoman threats in East Europe toughened kids into warriors. Yet art blooms. Illuminated manuscripts depict playful children countering grim views. Through it all, kids' lives mirrored society's evolution, from serfdom to emerging middle class. Their games became sports, apprenticeships, professions. Twist, medieval childhood's brevity built hardy adults who innovated. Compass, eyeglasses, mechanical clocks. Without them, no Renaissance. We've journeyed far, but imagine Tomas, grown, telling tales to his kids. Their world, harsh yet vibrant, echoes in ours. Next time you play chess or eat stew, thank those medieval mites. But wait, we've only cracked open the gate to this medieval maze. What if I revealed that behind the castle walls and peasant plows, children in Europe harbored dreams of chivalry and mysticism that could rival any fantasy novel? Dreams fueled by shadowy forests teeming with folklore creatures, monastic scriptoriums glowing with illuminated secrets, and urban alleys buzzing with apprentice rebellions. As we push deeper into the labyrinth of their upbringing, from the Dark Ages' survival scrambles to the late Middle Ages' bubbling innovations, you'll uncover how these kids weren't just passive players in history's drama. They were the unsung architects of change, planting seeds for the Renaissance, Reformation, and even our modern childhood ideals. Curious about the forbidden games that could land a child in stocks, or the surprising ways girls defied their fates? Let's extend our journey, era by era, because the real shocker is how their fleeting innocence sparked eternal revolutions in art, science, and society. Let's circle back to the early Middle Ages, often mislabeled the Dark Ages, roughly 500 to 1000 CE. A time of fragmentation after Rome's fall. For a child like young Alfric in Anglo-Saxon England, life began in a timber longhouse, smoke curling from a central hearth that doubled as kitchen, warmer, and storyteller's stage. Born amid Viking threats, those Norse raiders who pillaged coasts from 793 CE onward, Alfric might huddle under firs as his mother whispered charms against the sea wolves. Birth itself was a gamble. Midwives, often wise women versed in herbs like fennel for easing labor, attended, but without sanitation, sepsis claimed many. Swaddling continued, but in colder climes like Scandinavia, babies were bundled in wool from sheep they later herded. Naming ceremonies invoked saints or pagan holdovers, Thor for strength in Norse lands, even as Christianity spread. But here's a mind-boggling twist. These dark times weren't intellectually barren. Monasteries like those founded by Saint Benedict in Italy 529 CE became beacons where oblate children, donated boys as young as 5, learned Latin, scripture, and herbology in scriptoriums. They copied manuscripts by quill, their tiny hands illuminating pages with gold leaf and vibrant inks from crushed beetles or plants. Imagine a child monk illustrating a bestiary, drawing dragons based on traveler tales, blending faith and fantasy. Daily life for peasant kids varied by region.
In Byzantine Constantinople, heirs to Rome's Eastern legacy, children like little Sophia grew up in multi-story insulae apartments amidst the Hagia Sophia's domes. They played with terracotta dolls or hoops rolled through bustling forums, learning Greek from street tutors. Diets included olives, figs, and flatbreads, healthier in the Mediterranean than Northern Europe's gruel. But dangers? Earthquakes, like the 557 CE quake that shook the city, or plagues from trade ships. Byzantine kids attended elementary schools more often, reciting Homer, a nod to classical roots. In contrast, Celtic kids in Ireland, under monastic influence post-St. Patrick 5th century, learned bardic tales orally, memorizing epics like the Tyne Bo Qualgy around turf fires. Games? Hurley and early hockey with ash sticks, building agility for potential clan wars. Shocking custom? Fosterage, where kids were sent to other families at 7 for education and alliances, forging bonds stronger than blood but risking abuse. Work started early everywhere. By 6 or 7, kids minded siblings or fetched water from wells, often contaminated, leading to dysentery outbreaks. In feudal manors emerging around 900 CE, the three-field system rotated crops, teaching kids sustainability. Wheat one year, legumes the next to replenish soil. Girls milked cows, churning butter in wooden dasher churns, while boys trapped rabbits with snares. But play wove in. Queek, hide-and-seek in barns, or hot cockles, a guessing game where blindfolded kids identified slappers. Festivals provided respite. Easter egg hunts, dyed with onion skins, symbolizing resurrection. Religion shaped psyches. Kids attended Mass, fearing purgatory illustrated in doom paintings on church walls. But here's the hook. Superstitions added whimsy. Changeling myths warned of fairies stealing babies, so iron pins warded cribs. Intrigued? What if illness struck? No vaccines, just bleedings or leeches by barber surgeons who treated kids like mini-adults.
Transitioning to the High Middle Ages, 1000 to 1300 CE, feudalism solidified, and population boomed thanks to warmer climates and horse collars boosting plows. For Thomas, in a Norman village post-1066 conquest, life meant owing boon work, extra labor for lords during harvests. Castles loomed, symbols of power. Kids gazed at them, dreaming of knighthood. Noble boys like young Geoffrey entered page service at 7, polishing armor and learning falconry, hunting with birds of prey, a status game. Training included quintain tilting, charging a dummy with lances on ponies. Girls? Betrothed early, learning heraldry to manage estates. But peasant girls had agency too. In markets, they sold eggs or ale brewed at home, haggling with merchants. Urban growth in places like Florence birthed a merchant class. Kids there apprenticed younger, learning double-entry bookkeeping, an Italian innovation around 1300. Education evolved. Cathedral schools in France taught the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, to cleric-bound boys. Peter Abelard's debates in Paris, 12th century, inspired teen scholars. But for girls? Rare. Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century abbess, was exceptional, composing music and writing on medicine as a child prodigy in a convent. Mind-boggling, convents offered literacy to some girls, where they illustrated herbals, early botany texts. Dangers escalated. Crusades, 995 to 1291, orphaned many, with kids joining as camp followers, facing Saracen arrows or starvation sieges. The Fourth Crusades, sack of Constantinople, 1204, displaced Byzantine children, some sold into slavery. Yet joy sparked in carnivals, Shrovetide, pre-Lent, with pancake races and mock battles, kids pelting each other with flour sacks. Health remained precarious. Scurvy from vitamin lacks, rickets from sunless winters, kids hobbled on bowed legs. Remedies? Willow bark for fevers, aspirin's precursor, or saint relics for miracles. The Church's 7 sacraments marked milestones.
Baptism at birth warded evil. Confirmation at 7 affirmed faith. Family dynamics? Large broods, 6 to 10 kids to offset deaths, but affection showed in wills, bequeathing toys like spinning tops. Marriages? Church oversight post-1215 Lateran Council required consent, but pressures loomed. Shocking, child marriages among nobles, like Margaret Beaufort wedding at 12, birthing Henry VII at 13. Traumatic, yet common. Now, the late Middle Ages, 1300 to 1500 CE, shadowed by catastrophe, but lit by rebirth. The Great Famine, 1315 to 1317, starved kids, eating thatch or worse. Then the Black Death struck. Imagine 8-year-old Agnes in Avignon watching carts haul bloated bodies, the air reeking of vinegar-soaked masks. Orphans formed bands, surviving as beggars or thieves in London's underbelly. But survivors gained leverage. Labor shortages post-plague ended serfdom in places, with kids negotiating better apprenticeships. In guilds like Venice's glassblowers, boys started at 10, mastering molten art amid furnace heat. Dangerous, but skilled. Regional flavors enriched upbringing. In Spain, during Reconquista, Moorish influences brought algebra to schools. Kids played alquerque, checkers ancestor. Italian city-states like Florence saw humanist education. Boys studied Vitruvius, girls secretly read Boccaccio's tales. Printing press, Gutenberg 1440, democratized knowledge. Cheap pamphlets taught ABCs to more kids. Games evolved. Cards, 1370s, for gambling, risking whippings. Festivals like Corpus Christi processions featured child actors in mystery plays, retelling Bible stories on wagons. Warfare marked psyches. Joan of Arc, a teen peasant girl, 1412 to 1431, led armies, inspiring girls to dream beyond hearths. But witch hunts began, accusing kids of pacts with devils. Education peaked. Universities like Cambridge, 1209, took teens, debating scholasticism. Noble girls learned languages for diplomacy. Peasants' kids joined Morris dances, clashing sticks in rhythm. Through regions, from Highland Scottish clans where kids learned bagpipes amid feuds, to Polish serfs herding in vast fields, childhood blended toil, faith, and fleeting fun. Legacies? Their apprenticeships birthed capitalism, games, modern sports, resilience, exploration eras. But deeper still, emotional worlds. Diaries like those from 15th century merchants reveal parental love, gifts of ribbons or worry over illnesses. Folklore, grim tales collected later, stemmed from oral stories scaring kids straight. Twist, medieval views saw kids as little adults, but Ares' theory debates this. Evidence shows protected innocence, like toy hoards in excavations. Extending further, Byzantine kids post-1204 adapted to Latin influences, learning dual scripts. Ottoman-conquered areas saw Christian boys conscripted as janissaries, raised Muslim warriors, a forced growing up. In Muscovy, Russia, emerging from the Mongol yoke, kids endured harsh winters, storytelling by stoves about Baba Yaga. As Renaissance dawned, kids like young Leonardo da Vinci apprenticed, sketching inventions. Their medieval roots, harsh yet formative, paved enlightenment.